Okay, this is the third time I've recorded video, like 40-minute videos, but I'm just gonna keep it short. It helps me to summarize a little bit of my points that I wanted to get back to you on. Fight Club 2K11. Um, okay, you brought up Nietzsche using a word for the experimenter. Um, Derrida, if you read Derrida, he'll bring up bricolage, the bricoleur, the tinkerer, he who tinkers. But he expands this into connotations of uh, parasite and host, makes an analogy there. Then he talks about the connotation of the word parasite and almost how it is always negative. And so I brought in an analogy of the parasite as peripheral uh, and I brought in an analogy of a buttress to a cathedral. That's my take, is that there's a buttressing going on. And Burroughs talks about the individual in terms of undifferentiated tissue and to remain in, he doesn't mention a helter-skelter lifestyle, but I think a satirical or a romantic Epicurean zigzaggy lifestyle that embraces the moment and says screw to the identification of self is some people lead very enriched lives, and in one respect, who the process of establishing yourself so that your work environment or your social ordering identifies you strictly and definitely as the profession or occupation that you'd like to adhere to. Um, that that course of conduct, I believe you need to, as Burroughs puts it, it's the old army gag, from here to eternity, get there firstest with the brownest nose. It is a race that needs to be taken very seriously. And if you want it, you press yourself, you must wholeheartedly press yourself, disclose yourself openly. Don't be afraid. I know on the East Coast there's a normative social, I mean, in my experience in Brooklyn, there is a normativity of behavior that you call normal, but it sounds like you've lost your friends already, and you can redefine yourself. Be as sophisticated as possible in your speech and start to network with other individuals. If you care to move locations, you'll find different activities, different modalities, different cultural airs. Um, and you can speak to me more about that if you're serious about experimenting or exploring this particular area. But anyway, okay, and so this is a common fear. This comes in with just the inheritance of being an English speaker or speaking any of the Euro languages. I think it's part of the male mythos of being a provider. Um, it may be fairly recent in terms of, a few centuries ago, joining the military or being a blacksmith or being a farmer or being a politician. I mean, there was different professions. Now things are much more splintered. You don't have to do what your parents, the tradition of your parents. You're open to identify yourself based on the plethora of different educational avenues that one can take. But what I was going to say was this: that, like, if you think of Bill Gates dropping out, or the Google guys formulating companies in their garage, these guys are tinkers and experimenters also. They run peripherally until, kind of like bacteria on the skin is different than bacteria in the skin. They're both parasites to the host. Some bacteria inside function symbiotically to the body. And you could think about workers, some people that have kids and or they're not certain what they're doing. They just take whatever position is available to them as opposed to gathering quickly an education and maneuvering specifically with the human resource departments of companies to intern with them and to acquire the knowledge via education and acquire the experience via associating themselves, getting a toe in to companies that do what it is you do. Now, if you decide not to do this and you want to retain a peripheral, the tinker, the experimenter. I mean, think of the impact of Nietzsche. I mean, think Einstein delivered his theorems and then went back to work as a patent clerk before he got his feedback. So I'm not certain he was giddy or he knew what impact his work was going to have until he got that feedback. And so I guess what I'm saying is the fear of identification is important, especially if you've gotten into trouble and you found doors closing on you. But there's companies that will allow, ex-cons get jobs, and people get jobs. There's one sales company out here that I would turn you on to, that where you work 10 hours a day, six days a week, and they hire ex-cons, they hire PhDs, they hire artists. I used to work for them. But what I wanted to do was speak like, because Derrida talking about the parasite as the bricoleur, the one that's experimenting with like petals of different colors on the outside, the one that tinkers. Every man can, if they're not industrialized, be a tinkerer that is opening themselves like different colored petals on different flowers, gathering different knowledges, and putting them together in experimental ways that are kind of helter-skeltery, and that this runs the periphery like a parasite on the host knowledges that may be beneficial, but that's kind of what I think Nietzsche was talking about when he was uh, like the man that acquires his industry is like the Apollo. He's like the hammer. And Nietzsche wanted to be a hammer through philosophy and through time. That's why he talked about why he was so wise, and how he was going to affect the future, which I think his premonitions to some extent came about. So there's no shame in following the footsteps of Nietzsche. It'd be like Van Gogh, very parasitic, just busted his hump, did his own thing, very depressed about life, and yet post life, the value of what he added is significant. My artwork has not been officially auctioned, so I'm not declared in a certain category of fine art as of yet. So in some respects, I remain this undifferentiated tissue, keep changing styles, keep changing locations. There's something that's not stationary enough, not platform enough. I'm not playing the game of sin, of non-sinning, sin as bullseye, as a target on a bullseye. The notion of getting back aboard, shooting your arrow, landing in the center. Now, if you hit the target, great. You're part of the industry. Now, if you hit the bullseye, that means you're shining. You're like this glorious individual. Now, you want to be fruitful in life, and some people believe that means to have kids, to have money, to have wealth, to not only be prosperous, but to be famous, to be known. I mean, how you shoot an arrow and split the first arrow that hit the bullseye. It's that idea of being that kind of archer with your own life. Now, if you miss the target altogether, you land on the ground. It doesn't mean there's not something funny uh, about hitting the ground. There's plenty of people who miss the target in life altogether, and Burroughs was one of them. And he made a life of scattering his own life. Derrida, in his mid 40s, came out with his books, and a lot of people really disliked Derrida, but he was profound, at least for the last portion of his life. But working on deconstructive processes in terms of uh, not following the canonized view, now not accepting that which comes along with being an English speaker in Western culture that demands these pointed direction, this drive to race to acquire, but some of what it means to do these things are extensions of certain religious philosophies. Some religions want you to peaceably, remain celibate, honor certain things that are static. Other religions want you to race very quickly, become industrialized very, very quickly. My suggestion is disclose directly in essay form to companies, and verbally sit down with the people doing the hiring at companies. If you need to get into school, do the same thing with those administrators. So HR departments, other administrators, carve out a 5-year plan, and count on that in order to get as close as you can. Now, if you do want to remain a tinker, if you have something you're trying to write, because I'm not certain, I don't know what you're trying to do. If you have something in the humanities or something that you're trying to contribute that you think is profound and you really need to work on it on your own in order to do this, then there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to support yourself within society, and then take this on as your sideline, your B work, or your A work, and then your supporting occupation is your B work. Some people that have kids or have other responsibilities, they have to toe the line, so they take on jobs immediately and they bust their hump all the way through those jobs, and they try to get to managerial positions or administrative positions so quickly, and that's the career that they take. And some of these people are genuinely happy. They raise their families off of this. Other people get despot and they need to break away from it. I think the political air now is very interesting because a lot of entitlement programs and a lot of unemployment, where people are still given food stamps or money from the government. It gives their arrow a chance to collapse into a rope, maybe repoint again into another direction. And so, any time that you have to reconsider your direction of identity, go for it. But like Lenin said, life is what happens to us while we're busy making plans. I mean, think very hard um, about who you can be satisfied with as just being a man. Like in that Star Trek movie, just be a man and then let history decide who you are. But I know what you mean as far as like living inside of your dream or your idealism, realizing that you're identified as something, what it is you want to be identified as. It takes time, it takes company, oftentimes it takes education to do it. So get in and do it. If you have to do a lot of preliminary work on your own, do it. But realize a lot of the stuff that's done on your own is more of the sartorial dancing life. I mean, Nietzsche was very down on artists also, or I read him finding them despicable in certain, and he's always about men of knowledge, if you like Nietzsche. But as far as so hopefully I'm lining this up that the parasite connotation is what Derrida was speaking of, and that's why I'm working with the like taking the connotation of suffering and trying to replace it with endurance, because the connotation of suffering has such a downward stroke to it, where and so grammar policing or ethical policing and deconstructive sliding value away from the historic inherited structures that men often have to endure, and then certain things are considered rites of passages to get to your identification. Um, a lot of people that never hit a spot, they never do anything, they're despot, and then they have to rely not on what they've accomplished, they have to rely on the informations that they've held, and so their knowledges do not feed them, their dream did not feed them. And I mean, you can't accomplish everything. You can accomplish as much as you want, and the more you focus on certain things, get in, get the job done, go uh, into direction. I mean, the military. If you join the military, that's the biggest welfare program that we have. And after the boot camp, there's a lot of things that you could choose to direct yourself, and that would be a means of getting an education within an industry that might be closely related to what it is you want, and then you could go through at least a few different industries and learn those, and then come out and be in a field such that your identification was known via history of occupation. And they would overlook a lot of the felonies or whatnot. Or I'm not certain of the details of who the what happens with regards to the military. So the connotation of parasite as upon the host, and then something that's symbiotic to the host, and getting to the central interiority of a cathedral as akin to hitting the bullseye, and then thinking about being the construction worker or the tinkerer who defines or colors the bullseye or designs the inside or the outside of the cathedral, and think of the buttresses that hold up the cathedral. To be a buttress of a cathedral is not to lessen or have a negative connotation to the internalized, inherited, canonized center of a cathedral. If one wanted to make the inherited lingual structures and the male requirements of idealism and the fear that you said metaphorific to the cathedral, you can consider the fear having to do with the connotation of parasite, or you can consider it more akin to being a buttress or a flower on the outside of the cathedral, not a part of it. Um, Very, very difficult competition in the world. But a lot of people start businesses and they're never famous, but they're contributors. They feed their families. They do very, very well for themselves. Um, Everything isn't doom and gloom. But if I was you, I would consider grabbing your girlfriend and getting the hell out of New York, and at least taking a look around and seeing if there's some other cities, because every province, every state, the South is different than the West. Utah is definitely different country. New York and the East Coast, Boston area, I got a whole different feel for that area. Um, Arizona, such a different feel. certain liberal states, certain conservative states, law structures, community structures, um, language or racial populations. All sorts of things play into people's notions of what is going to feed them and accommodate them and make them feel like they're on the right track and that they're in a good area to do that. But even if you have to stand a certain environment in order to accomplish something that you don't like, it's recommended that you do that in order to achieve that. So I mean, I think you know what to do, but I just wanted to talk about connotations and accepting life as it comes. I mean, I sidestepped a very lucrative, cutting edge, high paying career to help a friend in a custody battle, and that disjointed my whole arrows thrust, and it forced me to reassess and regather and redirect. And I've moved not through a battlefield as much as I would say through a helter skelter uh, approach to life that's very much like an old car that needs a lot of repair. And but it's been a romantic and satorical. It's been parasitic, but it's also been defining. I've moved through things more like a bouncing ball, where I've quickly achieved statuses through companies, multiple companies, like JetBlue and Amazon.com and eBay. I've worked for all of those companies, and I've laid hardwood floors. I've taught painting. I don't know. I mean, that's just to name a few, but I used to company hop and get in and build myself up quickly in the company, establish that as a resume piece to roll over into another company. Downfall, like, because I didn't want to work at a company for over a year, so I've never worked for a company for longer than 17 months, and rolled that over into companies. But eventually, that resume style, people were looking for people that were going to endure their company for a longer period of time. It started to work against me, but I was using those as sideline B jobs in order to development insight into major corporations. But at the same time, I've always been working on painting on the side and or wholeheartedly when I was living in LA, supporting myself wholeheartedly last year. Different years I bounced through strict support off of artwork alone. And anyway, so I'm not certain what your dream is. If it's in the humanities, it's going to be a difficult ride and a different sort of ride than if you were to move into engineering or sciences. Military, like I said, could come down to that. Policing grammar, policing the world, moving into military welfare and processes. I think a lot of times there's something disgusting about becoming a controller and realizing that some of your ethics against that particular lifestyle, like if you're anything like me, you might have developed an ethic against policing and against the state in terms of these areas. But there's a lot of benefit that can come out in terms of medical benefits, in terms of information technologies, top secret information, access to other things. So it's something to consider. You need to drop the considerations of what you think other people might hold and acquire what you believe is best for you based on this, because you only go around once. And so, pack it up, pack it in, focus. And if you need to dance like a satyr of musical love to acquire what it is you need to do, throw to the tulips, then go for it. If you need to buckle down and bust out and move through the numbers and the calculations and go that route, then go that route. I don't know. I'm here to help. I know a lot of men, obviously, through the centuries and through time, and not just men, but women too. I mean, everybody has to eat. Everyone has to acquire money. I just associate it with inherited male mythos, um, where I think women are more bought and sold. God, it's awful to think that way, but certain ideas about that um, come to mind. Anyway, so I'm just trying to throw down metaphor and talk about winding roads, the low road, the high road, identification, the notion of men at certain ages needing or wanting or desiring to accomplish certain things. Because if you spend your life in jail, I mean, I have two nephews that are both in prison now, nephews through marriage, and one of them has two kids, one of them has one, and their their baby mamas are busting their hump or on welfare, and these guys are they're in prison, and all I can do is send them a reading list and say, look, get through these books as quickly as you can because maybe this will course correct you when you come out. Um, but a lot, I tell you, uh, there's a lot of rich life out there. I mean, life is amazing, and it's gruelingly visceral and bloody, and we know that, like you said, it's a battlefield. It may just continue to be a battlefield. It should even out, and there should be some sense of comfort that comes back based on your work and based on looking back at things and accepting positions. Um, but keep your eye out for opportunity, and don't treat it poorly when it shows up. Like, give it respect and give it full motivation, and don't try to hesitate on it, because I mean, a lot of things are real, and there's a lot of people that will help and want to help, and in different areas. I mean, some people might be crude and rough and tough to work with, and so those people can blow it out their ass. If you can't negotiate with them, if they're not helpful, then you got to find people that are, because they're there. There's a lot of people that are there. Um, anyway, you seem like you got a good head. You seem like you're course correcting. As far as I'll try to keep this short. As far as identifying with family members and the loss or the hardships of people that you're viscerally bounded to, and thinking about proximity to family while you're younger, unless your parents are very old, consider moving if you're considering moving earlier. Um, Maybe if you're more mutable in your memories, move away from the harshest aspects of the memories, even the good memories that hold you back. Um, try not try not to honor things of your past if they're not beneficial to allowances for what you think your future should look like. These are my advisements, and like I said, I'm not a wise man, but anyway, I don't know if this made any sense or if it's any good, but yeah, keep networking and building up on your own. A lot of things have to be built. I mean, people have to build their own identities in so many ways, and I don't think Nietzsche was different than that. I mean, he built it through his writing, and I mean, see what you do, see who you become, and you know, enjoy it.